It's lovely to see so many people. Thank you all for coming. I'm Liz Chalfin, the founding director of Zea Mays. It's a challenge to condense 25 years into 4 or 5 minutes, so I will do my best. This was our very first studio in the Arts and Industry building in Florence, and it was started out as my personal studio. I want to give you a brief background of what brought me to Massachusetts and what brought this idea of Zea Mays Printmaking into being. I'm a native Californian, born and raised in Whittier, California, and I was teaching at Whittier College, which is a small liberal arts college in Southern California, east of Los Angeles, when I was introduced to some of the ideas around safer and non-toxic printmaking. And I decided that I would try to implement some of these things in this college setting and realized that there's really no place outside of academia where this kind of research was being done and these kinds of techniques were being shared with others. So when my family, my husband, my 2 kids, our dog, our yucca tree, all piled into our station wagon. We sold our house, no jobs. We came east with this hope of kind of establishing a new life. And this seed, this kernel of a seed for a studio that could provide a community, a workshop environment, a research environment, an educational resource was planted in my head, and I came here to really sow that seed and have it grow here in Western Mass. As you can see in this picture, the studio started very small. We had 1 press, a couple of members, a couple of tables, and my goal was to create this space that would be a catalyst for learning, for experimenting, for artists to have an active practice, and for dissemination. Nothing about Zea Mays happened without help. This was not, I might have had the idea, but it could never have come into fruition without so much help and trust and belief from so many people. So when I first came to this area, I started to work at the Smith College Museum of Art. I have a background in museum education and was lucky enough to get a job there. And through my connections at Smith, I met so many of the artists working in this area and the professors who were teaching and the artists that they would bring in. And so the studio started out with me being able to tap into these resources. And I just can't express how much gratitude I have for people like Dwight Pogue and Gary Neiswanger and Mark Zunino, who were the print department at Smith, who loaned me equipment and helped me learn about other artists like Peter Pettengill, who's a master printer, who's here in this picture, printing in one of our first workshops. So when I was working at Smith and thinking of this idea, I started to raise funds and made a decision to be a for-profit business as opposed to a nonprofit. And part of that was about not wanting to have to fight over this tiny sliver of public funding that the arts get. And really this belief that we could do it on our own and create a model that other places could benefit from and replicate. In my family, my mother used to call her family a benevolent dictatorship, and I thought that's a great model for Zea Mays, is I would be a benevolent dictator, being able to make decisions quickly, turn on a dime, and yet do it with this welcoming and open-hearted attitude. So we started offering a few workshops, bringing in guest artists. I was getting to know artists in the community. And after 4 years in our little studio, an opportunity opened up to move to a bigger space. And it was really scary to think about taking on the financial obligations of a bigger space and what that might mean for the community. But we moved down the hall to another studio in the Arts and Industry building and raised funds to do a renovation and created a beautiful studio in that space where we We called this Zea Mays Printmaking until 2010, so we were in this space for 6 years. And during that time, we added equipment, we attracted more members, and part of my goal was to bring in artists from the community who were excellent artists and wonderful teachers and could share what they knew and practiced about safer printmaking. And so many of the teachers that we have working at our studio now really came out of these early days and have stayed with the studio for decades and have been a real part of its growth. So we offered more workshops. I think one of my skills is being able to spot talent and nurture it. And so I really leaned into the people that I knew would become great teachers, whether they had a pedigree or not, whether they had much experience or not. It was a very intuitive kind of experience of really saying, I think these people have a lot to offer, and let's provide a space for that. And again, the community really stepped up, and there was a need for a studio where people who had been kind of left out of printmaking because of health issues could come back to a space where people could learn something new, take a different approach, a place where we could showcase art that was made safely and not compromising quality. And so many people really felt a commitment to this idea and joined the studio. In 2011, we moved once again into our current house, which is in the Cutlery Building in Florence. Love being in Florence, and so happy that we could stay there. And again, we went through another renovation process. And several of the people in this room helped paint and move things and put together the studio that we now call Zea Mays Printmaking. And this building provided us more opportunities to grow. So on the second floor of the studio, we have an apartment where we house our artists in residence who come from all over the world. And we have two distinct studios, a members studio where our members always have a place to work, and then a teaching studio where we offer our workshops and classes. Zea Mays could not function without our studio monitors. And there's many different ways I've built the studio so that it supports the community, and the volunteer effort of the studio monitors is such an integral part of our studio. They're the ones who are there every day helping our members set presses and gather materials and get advice about their work. So we have 12 people who are so dedicated and committed to being a part of the studio. They also help select our artists, our fellowship artists, and participate in our committees. And even though we're a for-profit business, we really run like a nonprofit because there's so much volunteer effort that makes it happen. In 2015, my husband Sheldon joined the staff and really became the caretaker of our residency program, and we wouldn't be able to function without his generous, open-hearted way of welcoming people into the studio. We're so lucky today we have one of our artists in residence here, Kate Bailey's from Alberta, Canada, who has been here for her 10th residency. And next to her is Lorinda Mead, who's an artist from Portland, Maine, who has been a bridge between our studio and Peregrine Press in Maine, and is just an example of these connections we've had throughout the country and throughout the world from artists who come to our studio, get involved, and then take what they love and learn back into their communities. And it's created this amazing space where all different kinds of artists are coming through the studio and giving and taking and learning and sharing. It's pretty special. In 2015, we started our Green Printmaking Certificate Program. And this was a program where we thought we could teach everything we've learned about safer etching in an intensive workshop that would train other artists to work this way. And we are now in our 10th year of doing this program, and artists have come from all over the world to participate in it, and then they take this knowledge back to their communities. And so part of the mission of Zea Mays has been to be this little ripple that goes out into the world. And I've had the great fortune of being able to take some of this out to the world myself. For example, working with William Kentridge in Johannesburg, South Africa, teaching him a technique we do at the studio called coffee lift etching. So taking this instant coffee into his studio and showing him how to work with it was a highlight of my career. The pandemic forced us to pivot. When everything shut down, we had to find a way to survive, and part of that meant making video tutorials and going to online classes. And again, this community of amazing teachers that we have just jumped right on it and said, yes, we'll do it. We don't know how, but we'll figure it out and we'll do it. And now we have this online school, and the benefit of the pandemic for us was our reach is now international. We have artists from all over the country and all over the world who can access what we do because we have these online resources now that are integral to what we offer. And as I said, our residency program is just so vital for bringing new energy and new excitement into the studio. The studio continues to evolve. It will change over the years. I'm in my 60s and I won't do this forever, but I'm with it for the time being. But some of the things that I'm excited about for the future are the ways that the studio evolves as our knowledge about things change. So for instance, we might have had an understanding that something was safe 10 years ago and now learn that it's not as safe as we thought it was. So how do we adapt? How do we change? How do we evolve? Printmaking is not a static medium. It's been evolving since its founding over 500 years ago, and it will continue to evolve, hopefully with Zea Mays being a leader in that evolution. That was a quick history, right? So I'm going to segue a little bit into my own work because throughout this 25 years, I've also been a practicing artist. And I think that being an artist and being the director of Zea Mays has fed me in so many important ways. So I'm going to start with an image that relates to the piece that I have in the show downstairs. Downstairs I have a book on exhibit called Malecon, which is an artist book that is based on an experience I had in Cuba. Sheldon and I went to Cuba in, I think it was 2012, to bring to teach at the Arts High School there, and I was very impacted by the environment of Havana, and did a whole series of prints when I came back based on that experience of being in Havana. This is one of the images, and this is another. And in my practice, I often finish a series by creating an artist book. That's a way for me to put closure on a series of prints that I've created. So the book that you see downstairs is a compilation of pages from prints that I didn't use in the series of flat two-dimensional work, but then bound into a book to kind of tell the story of the making of this series. And these prints all started out as ink wash drawings, which I then scanned and made into intaglio printing plates and printed on very thin papers that I dip in beeswax. And that wax makes them translucent so you can see through the surface of one page into another. And I tend to layer the work, and you can see the little stitch marks at the top. They're stitched together. And for me, it's a lot about memory and how we stitch together our memories of a place, how our memories change and evolve, what is left behind, what we reinvent, how we kind of recreate our experiences. And for me, the books do that as well, because as you turn the pages, you get a hint of what is to come, you get a little memory of what just passed, because you can see through from the back to the front. This is another series called Iterations, and this was a series that started out by etching these figures in copper that were like little copper paper dolls. And I used them to emboss into paper and do a series of embossed prints, but then I scanned those embossings and made etching plates out of those and made a series of prints. So the figures you see in this are scans of embossed physical copper figures, and then adding these layers of drawing and then this is the book that resulted from that series. So part of my practice is working on work, taking it to what I feel like is a conclusion, and then condensing that all into a book format. The current work I'm exploring now has to do with rain and clouds and murmurations. I'm thinking about climate, I'm thinking about weather changes, I'm thinking about the murmurations of birds as the movement of beings through our planet, whether it's animals or humans. It's a sense of a community moving together in one direction, and it's an obsession I've had for almost a year, and this is where my work is currently. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. I really appreciate that talk. Now we're going to hear from Angela Zammarelli, who started as an intern, is an instructor, and an artist in her own right. So welcome, Angela.
Good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. It's an honor to be here, especially sharing with two of my mentors from Zea Mays over the last 11 years. It's pretty special, so thanks. So my main work is I work with food cartons, so Tetra Pak, or this print is made with a salad box, so any laminated cardboard that has layers of plastic or metal within them, you can do dry point drawings in them, you can add medium, so then it's sort of like a hybrid of collagraph and dry point. This is just dry point, so just drawing into it, then I ink it up and I print it. In the center of this is a house spider, and house spiders appear a lot in my work. So these two images are also printed using Tetra Pak, so that is a cardboard that has metal in it. So your shelf-stable cartons like soy milk or almond milk, that would be that kind of carton, but really can use any kind of carton. These were made sort of in 2021, and they're printed on toilet paper wrappers, and if you remember back then, that's sort of the weird transition in the pandemic to sort of more opening up, and there was lots of talk about toilet paper earlier in this, but also it's like this is a material that was around, and something I'll digress here for a second. Using these materials is really wonderful, thinking about reciprocity in people. saving things for you and then giving them to you, and it's sort of like, oh, this is your trash, but actually it's like this lovely thing that happens where it's like, oh, you are saving these for me, you are flattening them, or you're cleaning them, and then giving them to me. So that's like something behind all of this that is a nice part of the practice. And then this one also is a cardboard piece. It's on, I had made it in a goldfish box. I have 2 children who are here tonight. They're 11 and 8. Hello. But goldfish, as you can imagine, is a large part of early childhood. And so this is made in that, and those little feet were tracings from one of my children. And this piece is called Phases, so that's also why the moon pattern's in it. This carton, here's another sort of boring little like technical thing. The kind of material that these goldfish boxes were made out of, they don't make them like that anymore, so it's interesting because I really liked these because there was a way you could remove extra layers, and it had mylar in it, so you could get super bright white parts. But now the carton is really just like a laminated cardboard, wax and plastic on either side, so that extra special thing is missing. But anyway, these are 2 prints. The one on the left is called Domestic Study 1, and the one on the right is called As Above, So Below. And I put them in here because they were made at the same time as the book that I have in the show downstairs called 35 was made. And at that time I was doing a lot with etching and watercolor monotypes. So both of these are etchings. That little circle in the middle was a salvaged yo-yo, which is a textile technique. So I had found a bunch of them and I decided to print on them. So that, and then it's Shinko laid onto a watercolor print. And then the other one is a little etching with watercolor to create the colors around it, and stitching. And this is from the same time period as that book downstairs. I was thinking having a book in a show is sort of interesting, especially when it's behind something, because books are, they're time related, and experiencing them, you kind of time travel through them. So if you are interested in seeing the book, I have a stop motion go through of it on my website. It's amfvz.com, and if you go under books, you can see that that in time. And then my last image is called A Heroic Effort, but individualism won't save you. And going back to those the toilet paper wrappers, that braided rug that's on the wall is made out of toilet paper wrappers that some of my neighbors had saved me, and they are really colorful and braided up really nicely. The fabric that the print is on is from my wiping fabrics, so I save my, when you wipe, a lot of people wipe their plates with tarlatan, but I'm using actually a synthetic organza from a curtain I found on the side of the road, and it works and it's soft. So I had washed them, and I realized it kind of makes a beautiful tie-dye marbled effect. So I have started printing on them too. So that's, everything in this is made from junk. The plate was made from a milk carton. The only thing that was new was the ink. But yeah, and that is my work. So thank you so much.
Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Joyce Silverstone, who is an artist and teacher and a longtime member of Zea Mays.
From left to right, there's transfer drawing, the touch of ink to paper that is by hand. Very meaningful for me in my practice. And moving through a monotype that has edges, and how do do you make that edge, and how do you form that edge, and how does it meet another edge? And this one meets a wood lithograph, which I learned from a visiting artist. She was down in the annex, and I forget where she was from, but she was working with lithography, and this on wood, gave a demonstration to the whole community, and I just went like, wow, this is amazing. I'm going to study this. I'm going to work with this, and brought it right into my practice. I'm showing this one because it kind of incorporates that. I spent a long time working with collage, and the edges and transitions became really important within my practice studying color. But this one incorporates a dry point plate, lithography, and the working of the paper. So working the front and the back. The right-hand side is actually the back of the dry point, and breaking through became really intriguing to me. So the sanding and the different techniques, I feel like they all come together as a form of drawing. You know, just very sort of primarily in my practice. And right now, I'm doing drawings in a different way. I'm starting with charcoal rubbings of natural objects that are layered after I print them as paper lithos. And the paper lithography was introduced by Ann Beresford into the studio, whose print is downstairs. It just, the ephemeral nature of using paper as a plate and letting the whole thing fall apart if it does, and that's somehow part of the image. And especially in this layered way, they don't really come together as drawings until they're layered. So I'm into that practice right now. I'm teaching a workshop in the spring in that method. And I just wanted to end with this piece because Zea Mays offers this often challenging but very important to my practice, I realize, over the years. Accepting the challenges to do something new. And this one was, can you make a sculptural print? And I feel like, oh yeah, maybe if I continue working with, if you go from the left to the right, you know, just the back of the print, the front of the print, let it roll, let it meet an edge, let it, you know, become a space. The name of the piece is described, The Wind, and that's where I'll leave it.
We're just going to set up some stools, and then we're going to have a Q&A, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask the artists questions in just a second. Thank you. One of the questions that I had for all of you, and you touched upon it in the presentations that you gave about your own work, was thinking about some of the innovative processes that you've incorporated and the experimentation, and I really think that's what Zea Mays is known for. So I was wondering, Angela, if you wouldn't mind speaking about your research and what that resulted in?
Specifically an internship.
Or any other work that you've done?
Well, I will go back to that time as an intern in terms of also sort of being introduced to processes that I did take into my own work. But when I came in to Zea Mays as an intern, I had been a sculptor and did performance and installation more before. So learning about, so my research project was transparent base. It's kind of like, oh, transparent base, what? Because there had been other processes, like you did the peel and lift, was peel and press, I think right before me. There are these other like very glamorous processes, and I was like, oh, okay. But the transparent base was such a great thing to work with to figure out like what happens, like what's in ink, like what is that, like breaking it down and having this opportunity to spend, I guess, being slow with something too, time over 6 months, being like, what makes the transparent piece we were trying to replicate, I'll go back to that, was Faust, this company Faust Transparent Base, and etchers across the country loved it for this really buttery quality, and it didn't oxidize the plates. And people were kind of mourning the loss of it because the company closed. And so we were trying to come up with a recipe that's non-toxic and also fit the qualities of this ink. So for me, that started, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, everybody. Just taking that into my work and learning, thinking about inks and materials that way. From the different workshops, learning from different, like assisting in them, learning different processes to take into my own. And during that time of the internship, there was another intern who had been playing around with a milk carton. And I thought that was really cool, but I tucked it away for a while because I just wasn't ready. I was doing watercolor monotypes at the time. That was sort of what I was into. But her introducing me to that, like, oh, you don't have to use copper, you don't have to use PETG, because like there's other ways of making these things. So that was something I introduced into my practice from that point, and have pushed it, I think, exploring with it and getting really rich tones and things. I know sometimes people talk about the cartons in the very beginning being like, oh, like you can't get tonal qualities or things, but I have been, and other people too, like it's sort of over the past 2 or 3 years, it's sort of exploded all over the place, printing with them as a material, but having that time and being supported in having a weird material at a studio, to pushing it further.
How many prints do you get off of a milk carton plate?
It sort of depends. It depends on how you work the plate. I just did a print portfolio where I got at least 32 and 27 were an addition. So that's actually like pretty big. Sometimes I get 6 or 5, or that spider, to be so good, that first plate, I got 3, and then things started really falling apart on it. So it sort of depends on the material, like because each type of carton has its own materiality, in strength. So yeah, it can depend, but you can actually get a pretty good addition if you want. Yeah, sorry.
Liz, with all of this innovation, with all of this experimentation, what have been some of the most challenging projects that artists have approached you with that have left you wondering?
Oh my goodness. Was this question given in advance?
I'm modifying.
The most challenging projects. The ice shanty was great. Thank you, Doris, for bringing that up. As a community, we were invited by the Brattleboro Museum of Art to create, they do a project called Ice Shanties, and they invite artists and groups of artists to create these structures that are supposed to go out on the ice. And Nancy Giesner, who's here, spearheaded our participation in this, and we built a 3-sided pyramid that you can sit in. The outside was all different printing plates, wood blocks, copper, metal, photopolymer plates, and the inside was all prints that artists had made from these plates. So, artists donated their work, both their plates and their prints, and Nancy spearheaded, I don't know, it took months, right? Months of first designing this thing that could stand on the ice and would stand up and would last outdoors for this length of time, and then organizing these crews of people to put it together. But it was fantastic. It was fantastic. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
In my personal work,
Yeah,
or what I've seen.
your own personal work. What's been one of the most challenging projects you've undertaken?
Well, a challenge in a good way. I mentioned the sculptural print, but another one was we did a fundraiser as a community for the Audubon Society. It was during the pandemic, or one in there. And that dovetailed with a project that I was doing about the sort of the plight of the bobolink, which is a particular bird that's on the endangered list. And in the fields where I walk in South Amherst, there's a nesting site for them. And for this portfolio of prints for the Audubon, I was feeling like such an attachment to them and an awareness of their disappearance, just the fragility of it all. And even though it wasn't like a fabulous Audubon print, because there was no real evidence of a bird, I figured out how to scan the QR code from the Audubon site that would allow people to take a picture of the print. It was embedded in the sort of hatching of the murmuring birds images, and you could take a picture and it would take you to the song. So it was like, oh my gosh, hearing the bird, hearing that song, that was challenging to figure out into all that and actually get it to the song. But it was a great challenge.
That sounds like an amazing project. Is it still up and can you find the print online?
Yeah, I can't find it online, but it's, ask me.
Question for all of you. So Liz, you mentioned that you bring in international artists and you have artists here now with you, and maybe you could just, all three of you, talk about what that experience is like, having artists from all over the world bring in their perspective, how it informs you as instructors, and also how it impacts you as artists.
I'll start. It's one of the best things about our studio, I think. I mean, there's so many wonderful things about our studio, and our local community is one of the best things, and the artists that we bring into our residency program is another one of the best things, because we get perspectives from all over the world. We get the exchange of ideas, the friendships that people make with these artists who come, the experiences that they have. I can't count how many artists have had a conversation with an artist in residence who've told them about a wonderful place to go, who then our artists then go out to the world and go to those places and go on residencies. They bring their knowledge and share with us. We've learned so much from people who have come. It's a very back and forth, give and take relationship. And we offer one residency fellowship a year, so we get applications. We usually get around 50 or 60 applications for this one little 2-week slot. But even through those applications, we're able to identify all these wonderful artists out there, and we invite them to come on self-funded residencies. And so it's just a, we're like a niche of a niche of a niche in the art world, but we're able to connect with the tribe that's out there in the whole world that's also super interested in this kind of work.
I was going to say, it's also such a great opportunity. The artists in residence are normally so generous. They'll share tips on techniques, or you can brainstorm and problem solve in the studio. But then a lot of times people open their studios, so you can have a studio visit with them, or open studio at the end. Normally at the end on the Friday, there'll be a an open studio, and you can go in and people are generous and share about their processes, and just getting to look at the work that they did in the 2 weeks that they had this concentrated time is really amazing and such a nice thing to have access to. So if you don't know about it, come and you can see people who've done had their concentrated studio time. It's really great.
Absolutely, all of that, and more. Friendships for sure. I'm thinking how important it's been to continue to be part of a learning community, and sometimes for me it begins as a visiting artist wanting to learn something about what I teach. So I'll start with a colograph tutorial, and then this just happened. Someone came and she wanted a colograph tutorial, and she was making these smashed vessels, paper vessels, that she then made two-dimensional, and then made that out of became a colograph. And so much beauty that I'm teaching you with these materials, but I'm watching what's happening. And that just happens so often, within the studio that, when I entered 20 years ago, I thought, this is like going to graduate school, this is like I'm going to be able to go to graduate school and learn printmaking, and in my own way. And artist in residence programs continue that just over and over again. It's really exciting.
Thank you for answering my questions. I want to make sure that we have time to answer a few questions from the audience. So if people want to ask a question, I'll come around with the mic. Any questions out there for our panelists? Jenny.
I know that you've worked with UMass in the past chemistry department, and I'm just curious about how that worked.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to thank you, Mass. So we are not scientists at Zea Mays. We are a bunch of artists who are interested in the materials we work with and the impact they have on our health and on the environment. And we are grateful that there's a lot of research out there on the internet where we can, self-study and learn things, but we really don't come to our experiments and our inquiries with any kind of scientific background. And I was so fortunate, I reached out to Dr. Richard Peltier, who's a professor here at UMass, when we started working with our photopolymer practice. And for those of you who don't know, this is a photo etching technique where you start with a metal plate that has a polymer coating on it that you expose to a film and develop in water, and then you end up with an etching plate that you can print like an etching. But when we started using this 20 years ago, it was a very new technology, and there were people saying it's completely non-toxic, and there are people saying, well, it might be a little bit toxic, or it might be more toxic, and we didn't really know. So I reached out to Dr. Peltier, and he was so generous and came to the studio and looked at the materials and took the material safety data sheets back to his laboratory and looked at the wastewater we were creating and came back to us and was able to explain in layman's terms what we were working with and what it meant safety-wise and health-wise, and we couldn't have done it without him. And over the years, through several experiments, when we get to a scientific question that I can't answer and we can't find out on our own, we've relied on the expertise of the faculty that you have here, and especially Dr. Peltier, who we're so grateful for. We also have, the state of Massachusetts has this great opportunity for the Office of, I think it's called the Office of Environmental Technology, will send people out to workplaces to kind of do an assessment of the safety hazards and the health hazards of the materials. And they came to our studio, this was probably 10, 15 years ago, and did an assessment of all the materials we work with. So we try and rely on these outside experts when we don't know. Thanks for that question.
Thank you. I don't see any, one other question?
I have a two-part question. So I know the exhibition downstairs is one of many celebrations you're having this year to mark this momentous anniversary of 25 years. So I was wondering if you could share what else we should know about that's happening this year, and then also thinking forward for the next 25 years. What are you envisioning? What are your hopes and dreams? Are you happy where you are? I know you've gone through a lot of different locations, but are you looking to expand, or do you like the kind of shape? And yeah, so tell me more about what you're thinking for the future.
So opening on Friday, we have another exhibition at the Hosmer Gallery at Forbes Library in Northampton, another 25-year celebration with, how many works? 68 works of art by our studio members. So, and it's up for the most of December, right? No, up for most of November. So all of November and a little December? No, just November. Okay, so come this month to Forbes Library. It's a beautiful show, and I'm so grateful. Our exhibition committee has done all the work. That's why I have no answers to these questions, because they've done all the work to hang it and organize it, and it's a beautiful show. And this is really kind of the last event of our 25-year. We had a wonderful open house in June. We had over 200 community members come in. We had artist demonstrations. We had hands-on projects that families could do. It was really a great event. We have this show. We had a community potluck, a giant potluck with 150 of our members and their families, and it was a huge, great celebration with fabulous entertainment. Many of our artists are multi-talented people that can entertain as well as make art, and it was just a giant love fest, which was wonderful. In April, we took a group of our 5 artists to Wales to work with the inventor of one of the etching grounds, Andrew Baldwin. We went to his tiny little studio in Wales and had a week-long workshop with him. So we've had some really poignant celebrations throughout the year. Going forward, I'm hatching all kinds of ideas for the future, and I have great optimism that the studio will continue to grow and evolve. We're going to stay where we're at, although I can't believe that 6,000 square feet, we're already bursting at the seams and wishing we had more space, but not to be greedy. We'll make do with what we have. But right now we're in the process of turning our gallery space into a project space, and the studio is always evolving and changing to meet the moment, and I foresee that happening well into the future. You guys have ideas?
Thank you, Liz. I mean, really, thank goodness. You know, I've seen it in action. All the little models of where can we put this press, where can we put that file. Yeah, just physically, the possibilities of change. But within the system, I mean, adding the mentorship program, just it really feel like very substantial new programs. It just keeps happening. So thank you.
I think that's the beauty of got to plan it to the audience. We have a fabulous project at the studio called the Flat File Project, where we invite our member artists to submit a portfolio of prints. We have 2 submission dates in the year, and they submit a portfolio of 20 prints, and the 3 of us, and Lynn, who asked the question, are on the committee, who then select 10 prints that live in this portfolio for a year. And I think that was the first way you were introduced to the work from our studio, was looking at some of the work in those
Yeah, we put
portfolios.
some of those online and then in the studio as well.
So artists, all of that is on our website, and you can see the work through the website. Then you can make an appointment to come to the studio and look at it in person. We have curators, wonderful curators, who choose work for shows out of our flat file. We have collectors who buy work directly from the flat file. We have people who just want to look at prints and experience it, come in and spend an hour or 2 just looking through the portfolios. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is there's not a Zea Mays style. Every artist is really pursuing their own artistic path within this community with these materials that we make accessible. But there's a huge breadth of work, and each artist goes deep into their own work and their own practice. So you can see a huge variety that way. Thanks for that question, Lynn.
All right. Well, Angela and Joyce, thank you so much for sharing your work with us and your generous spirit. And Liz, congratulations on 25 years. Well deserved.